Good morning, Mr. Clerk. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have quorum.
I call this meeting of City Council for May 22nd to order and acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, and the Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. We'll now have the opening prayer. Please rise if you're able, and we'll hear from Councillor Ross Eady.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Continuation of our acknowledgements. As we meet here, where the Indigenous people have met for thousands of years, where the rivers meet and the tributes meet and flow through the Red River, that's Winnipeg. And I present a thought for today. We, in this council chamber, have worked this year on many different changes to the way the City of Winnipeg delivers its services to the people of Winnipeg and visitors of Winnipeg. And on that thought, we all need to remember, and I try to remember, not everybody likes change, but we're trying to change things for the better. And when we do that, we're taking many calls and many emails and information from people who are quite disgruntled. But as we deliberate, though, and as we conduct our business of council, we do need to acknowledge that that we as leaders need to try to bring a calmness and relative situation related to the change, and keep in mind always that when we're interacting and making decisions in council, we're affecting the people of Winnipeg. And so it's that kind of thought that I give today when we're considering some of our business and other things that are happening in the news. We know that there's a lot of difficulty for people out there on the streets, and this council also works to try to help those people, and through our deliberations and working with other levels of government, we are mindful of the various needs of the people of Winnipeg, and they're not all the same. Everybody is different, and different approaches need to be used, and so hopefully the public will begin to understand as more changes start to flow during this term of our office. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Eady, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, and Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce our pages for today's meeting. Let's welcome Danielle Gadawan from St. John's High School, who resides in the Minarski Ward, and Vladislav Tanischuk from St. James Collegiate, who resides in the St. James Ward. Welcome. Thank you for serving council today. We'll now move into morning announcements. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning to you and all my colleagues and those who are here with us in the chamber and those watching online. Just a few announcements this morning. One is related to the recent education school tax changes. We're all aware the provincial government has made some significant changes to school taxes this year. I know many of you received calls from residents that are not seeing that new school tax program on their tax bills. As an update, our staff are working closely with the provincial government to explore options to ensure that homeowners can receive this provincial credit this year. And I want to commend our public service, specifically our CFO, Tracy Graham, our City Assessor, Tim Austin, and the Chair of Finance, Councillor Rawadi, for their work on this. I know they were even meeting with provincial officials over the long weekend. I know Tim Austin, for example, and Tracy both were taking calls and making calls on Sunday of the long weekend on this matter. So thank you very much to them, and we continue to work with the province to try to help them find a solution for this. I want to take a moment also to acknowledge that the Pride Winnipeg kicks off this weekend. It's a time to celebrate inclusion, diversity, and the 2S LGBTQ+ community, and to keep working toward a city where everyone feels safe and welcome. So I encourage everyone who can to take part, whether it's going to the rally or joining the parade or showing support in your own way. Pride is about being visible and standing together. Let's all help make this a great celebration. I also want to acknowledge that this week is Paramedic Services Week. Paramedics are some of the quiet heroes in our emergency services system. They show up in people's worst moments, when they're hurt or when they're scared or sick, and they do it with incredible skill and compassion. And I want every one of our paramedics to know, on behalf of all of us, how much they are appreciated and valued for the work that they do. Two final items. One, congratulations to our Winnipeg Jets on an outstanding season, really a record season, winning the President's Trophy and having a long, fairly long run in the playoffs here with a very memorable Game 7 of Round 1 that I think will stick with us as Jets fans for many years to come. And also congratulations to all the members of Parliament who were elected in this last federal election, those who are returning members of Parliament, those who are new MPs for our city. I did have the chance to reach out to all the City of Winnipeg members of Parliament of various parties. One more call to make. Call them to congratulate them on behalf of all of us. I did have a meeting with several of the Liberal MPs to reiterate the City of Winnipeg's priorities and hope and call upon them to continue to work with us, their federal government to work with the City of Winnipeg on implementing and really funding and strategically working together on the city's priorities. And so, again, thank you to each one for your ongoing dialogue with members of Parliament and elected officials of other levels of government. For us to really accomplish what we need to accomplish in the city, we need to continue to work with our federal and provincial partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next is Councillor Mays, followed by Councillor Wyatt.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Just a brief announcement that we've got set up for Monday of next week. The good folks at Miles Mac Collegiate have offered to host a contingent of city councillors, friends, staff for a Reach for the Top game in honor of our late colleague Jason Schreier. So if you can make that Monday at about 12. And Councillor Rowlands, to her credit, has been organizing a bit of a fundraising effort, the details of which I won't go into, related to that. So if you could please talk to Councillor Rowlands before end of day Friday, or talk to me. We're kind of coordinating this under Sherry's leadership. So a bit of initiative related to that for our late colleague Jason Schreier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise. I thank the Mayor for announcing Pride. I would like to also just add that at Pride this year, I know a lot of members of Council may be at FCM on that same weekend, but we are going to have a fundraiser for 210 Recovery, which is second stage and third stage recovery housing to help people coming out of rehabilitation so that they have a success and a chance at life and turning their lives around, becoming productive members of society. And the fundraiser is this: we are getting a dunk tank, and it's going to be Dunk the Hunk at Pride. And so anybody could buy balls and throw the balls, and we're going to do the same then the following weekend. After Dunk the Hunk, we're going to have Dunk the Politician at Transcona High Neighbor Festival, which is the following weekend. So I invite all of you to come join me in the dunk tank. You're back from FCM by that time, Mr. Mayor. I'm throwing down the gauntlet, and we'll be able to get in the dunk tank, and all the money being raised is going to go to the charity of 210 Recovery. It's going to be a great cause. So High Neighbor Festival is the weekend after Pride. So we have Pride coming up, not this weekend, but next, and the following weekend, Transcona High Neighbor Festival. Invite everybody out, and all my colleagues are welcome to join me in the dunk tank and bring your most colorful bathing suit. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm the politician. I'm definitely not the hunk.
Councillor Duncan, will you be in the dunk tank dunk? Wow. Okay, but we'll like to hear your morning announcement. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, unfortunately, I rise today to reflect on the passing of a friend, a former colleague, and fellow elected official, Pembina Trail School trustee Stu Nixon. Stu was a passionate educator, tireless advocate for youth, and deeply respected leader in our community of Charleswood and the surrounding football community. For over 35 years, he committed himself to shaping lives of young people, most notably during his 2 decades at Oak Park High School, where his football program became a source of pride, not just for the school, but for all of Charleswood and beyond. Many of his former players went on to earn scholarships and play at the highest levels, a testament to Stu's mentorship, discipline, and unwavering belief in their potential. Since being elected as a trustee for Pembina Trail School Division in 2002, Stu brought that same dedication to his role in public service. He was thoughtful, collaborative, and always grounded in his values of inclusion, respect, and the community. His work with his colleagues on the board and in senior administration helped build a culture where every student, staff member could feel safe, supported, and seen. Stu's loss is obviously heartbreaking for his family, first and foremost, but also for the many lives he touched as a teacher, coach, trustee, and neighbor. We as a community loved him very much so. We will miss his wisdom, his friendship, and his steady presence. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family during this difficult time. He was a true champion for our city and province. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan, for your thoughtful remarks. Thank you. Councillor Rollins, our final speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on a matter that, really we all watched, I think, as a council, and to acknowledge the fire paramedic service, but indeed the working overtime of fire paramedic service and volunteer firefighters that's been happening throughout the province. I was in Korea representing Winnipeg and council at the World Human Rights Conference while my husband's small town of Lac du Bonny burned, Madam Speaker. And, I got on the phone with Chief Schmidt because Transcona was still burning as I took off, Madam Speaker. And I remember last council how we came together and really looked at air quality, Madam Speaker, and we really looked at fire safety and prevention, including going outside the border of our city on that prevention with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. And I was proud about those decisions that this council made. But indeed, we need to look further. Madam Speaker, I'm a proponent of a National Fire Administration Service here in Canada, and I'm a proponent because really great brothers in arms like Lauren Schinkel from the Reeve of Lac du Bonny has really been on the front line working tirelessly along with all those other municipal officials and local governments, including Broken Head, Madam Speaker, including the PAW, who had the climate disaster that is fires burning in their community and a frozen lake, so the fire suppression couldn't really be activated. Madam Speaker, I think it's time that we recommit to leaning in towards climate justice and climate change, and also working with the federal government on a National Fire Administration Service. And that's why I was so pleased to be joined by my colleague, Councillor Marcus Chambers, on the Climate Caucus call yesterday. And I'm so pleased to, be on the Climate Caucus calls as I have been since talking about them to our Environment Chair, Councillor Mays. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to rise. My family in Lac du Bonny lost some beloved friends, and I believe they are victims of climate change. I believe they're victims of the fire that took them so suddenly, because that's what could happen. And as our fire paramedic service works on saving us from the grass fires and more, we just need to respect the changes that are happening and lean into what is needed, Madam Speaker. So thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you, Councillor Rollins. With that, Councillor Dobson, will you move the minutes of the meeting held on April 30th and May 2nd be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move suspension of the rules to hear from Jana McKee, Seven Oaks Immigrant Services Center, on item 2 of the PP&D agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. That would be the lease at Garden City Shopping Centre, the expression of interest. This would be our only delegation. All in favor of suspension of the rules? Aye. Contrary, that's carried. There'll be 5 minutes with no questions. Welcome to you, Jana McKee.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Speaker. I am really pleased to share some comments, my perspectives with you on the library that's being suggested put the Garden City Shopping Centre. As stated, my name is Jana McKee, Program Director of Seven Oaks Immigrant Services. I've been in this role for over 15 years, and I have a strong understanding of the needs of the newcomer community in our area. Libraries serve a wide group of people. When I was younger, I used it. My kids growing up, they used it. My neighbors use it. Many folks I know and I work with use it. Libraries are important spaces, from computer access to programming, access to other services, books and other media materials. Libraries are community hubs. This proposed location is accessible by bus, considering Garden City is a main depot. It's easy to walk to and there's lots of parking for cars. New developments, all in the northwest area of Winnipeg, they're considered car communities. I hope the new bus routes will support the residents in the north in accessing the rest of the city in Garden City. Garden City is a central location in the northwest area. Some libraries are brick and mortar, but this location is in the heart of the area and in a mall. People and families can do multiple tasks. They can get their kids' haircut, go grocery shopping, return or pick up new books all in one location. I want to thank my councillor, Debbie Sharma, you, Madam Speaker. You have advocated for a long time for expanded services in Northwest Winnipeg, particularly as it grows. I want to thank the Mayor for his leadership and all of Council for the importance being placed on library services.
Thank you, Jana. We appreciate you coming today to put your comments on the record. Thank you. Have a great day. Okay, no further delegations. We'll now move into reports. Mr. Mayor, report of the Executive Policy Committee dated May 13th.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce the report and move adoption of consent agenda items 1 to 8.
Okay. Councillor Mays, 5. Okay. City of Winnipeg Rapid Housing Initiative's been pulled. Okay, and that's all. So call the question on item 1 to 4, 6 through 8. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Madam Clerk?
Item 5, City of Winnipeg Rapid Housing Initiative, Round 3, Distribution of Program Contingency Funds.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to, I'll just wait to hear from my council colleagues. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Mays?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be voting in favor of the report, but what it highlights is really what our housing crisis, what our housing challenge is at this stage, which is a challenge around affordable housing, not so much housing affordability. You'll remember when Director Boris presented to us on the malls and corridors, she started by saying, in essence, where we have a crisis, it's in the lack of affordable housing. There's no doubt that single-family homes, condominiums, etc., homes in Winnipeg are certainly much cheaper than the average home in major cities like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto. Yet we are faced with a federal program that has one set of rules that's coming to us in 2 weeks or so under the Housing Accelerator, a program that has one set of national rules. We are straining to come up with a made-in-Winnipeg solution relative to that. So what this program, and the U of W folks have done a very fine job, really taking a leadership role in housing downtown. But again, the challenge for us is in affordable housing. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be standing here, and it's not a crisis of the missing middle housing. We're already at over 1,300 units. The target we had for a 36-month program was 1,026 units, so we're already 30% over what we sought to attain through the Housing Accelerator for missing middle, so we're fine on that. It's not a crisis about simply increasing housing at the top end and increasing supply somehow in the belief that that will drive down the price into an affordable housing range. It's also not about, we've had some talk here in the past about how we have to do these programs, otherwise because if we don't, the city will go bankrupt, and I think that's been discredited. Or if we do these programs, we won't need to build major road projects. We won't need to do Kenniston or Chief Peguis. Well, council has spoken on that. We voted to proceed with those, and the public service has spoken on those. The public service has taken an extremely public position that those projects have a cost benefit, have a benefit, a net benefit. In fact, Peguis at $900 million was listed as having a net benefit because it will unlock more suburban development. So let us not have a harangue, a lecture, a dispute in a few weeks' time about how if we just do more of the housing accelerator, fourplex kind of stuff, well, we'll be able to avoid all these major infrastructure projects. Council has voted to proceed with the major infrastructure projects, the horizontal infrastructure, the new roads, the new suburban development. That was the public service position, that we should do that, that would have a net benefit for the city. So what this will come down to is a debate about, we've got to do this to get federal money, and that's a fair debate. The exact details of what we have to do have yet to be sorted out. So certainly I hope we keep that in mind when we're debating threeplexes, fourplexes. Shouldn't some of that be mandated to be affordable? Shouldn't it? Why would we have a whole debate about affordable housing crisis and then completely ignore that in a debate about a major housing initiative? So none of the debate we're going to be having in 2 weeks' time pertains to the infrastructure money. That's all been allocated. None of that's for the fourplexes or threeplexes. The missing middle target that we were told we had to attain, long since gone. We've overshot it. We're in great shape. We're more than 30% over the target already, 15 months into a 36-month program. So keep in mind, when we're sitting here in 2 weeks, starting June 2nd, for that hearing on housing, let's remember the issue of affordable housing. I'm sure there will be amendments talking about whether we should include some affordable housing requirement as part of that initiative. And I think that will bear serious consideration. Obviously, it's a public hearing. We have to approach it with an open mind. I think we all will. But I just want to flag that concern at this end. What we will be debating in a few weeks' time is not about the city's bankruptcy, or it's not about avoiding major roads. It's not about missing middle housing. It's going to be about, hey, we have to do this program to qualify for federal funding, and that's okay. But let's keep in mind the crisis here, as stated by the director, as stated by this, is an affordable housing crisis. So we will have an opportunity in a few weeks' time to make some statements about affordable housing. To close, people in my ward have said, look, you're going to sell off houses that are like $240,000, have them torn down to have a new building going up, and these units, it's not going to be condos, it's not going to be owner occupied, it's going to be rental. You're not going to have 4 owners in there, it's going to be rental. And these units, history has shown us, have not been affordable housing by any definition. The rental units have been costing $2,000, $1,800. That's the sort of market in Glenwood. So keep that in mind in a few weeks' time when we're here. Let's put some weight behind the affordable housing part of this accelerator as we debate how we're going to make a Made in Winnipeg solution around the fourplexes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to close.
Thank you. You can call the question, Madam Speaker.
All in favor of item 5? Contrary? That's carried. Next, we have a notice of motion that's been circulated. Moved by Councillor Wyatt, seconded by Councillor Chambers. It's regarding the renaming of Kildonan Meadows Park to Lukey Family Park. Councillor Wyatt, I understand you'd like to suspend the rules.
Move suspension of the rules to hear this matter.
Okay. Councillor Chambers moves extension to hear the item today, and that would require, Mr. Clerk, 10 or 11? 2/3, that's right. Okay, and the package has been circulated here. Would you like to speak on the nature of the suspension, or?
Yes, just very briefly. The motion here
Or
is
just the importance, you're
Yeah.
suspending the rules to,
to hear a motion that is drafted by Councillor Wyatt and seconded by myself. It's a motion to honor Joe Lucky, who was a constable in Transcona for the Transcona Police Department before it amalgamated with the city of Winnipeg. Joe Lucky is a 91-year-old.
thank you, Councillor Chambers. I'm more getting at the time-sensitive nature, if you'd just like to speak to
Yeah,
that.
which I was about to. Joe Lucky is a 91-year-old veteran of the Winnipeg Police Service, and time is of the essence in terms of wanting to rename a park in honor of he and his wife. His wife passed away last year, and we're looking at getting this done in a timely manner.
Thank you. With that, I'll call for suspension of the rules. All in favor? Please rise. I think there was a call for a recorded vote. All in favor, please rise.
Councillors Allard, Burwadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Edie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt.
Okay. Those opposed, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, and Councillor Sharma.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 13, nays 2.
Okay. Thank you. We will hear the item today. Councillor Wyatt, if you would like to speak to the item, please.
Madam Speaker, the motion is very self-explanatory. It's, if there's anybody who wishes to speak to it, I would refrain from speaking until my closing comments, but
Thank
I
you.
would call the question unless there's anybody who wishes to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mays?
I would like to see a park named for the gentleman who's obviously got a stellar record. However, and Councillor Wyatt had talked to us about suspending the rules. I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine is with, yet again, going back to people in my ward and saying, now, there are 3 of you who've been waiting more than 3 years because of the Welcoming Winnipeg process. Keep waiting. Keep waiting. So I guess, should I come in here and claim you're all misogynists because you're against suspending the rules to name parks for women suddenly? Like, well, I thought we had a process.
Councillor
I thought we had a
Mays,
process.
we've got a motion before us. I understand your comments, but we have a policy coming forward, policy change. Can we speak to this today?
Yes, so we have a policy change, so we're going to suspend the rules for today to hear the item. So we're going to suspend the whole Welcoming Winnipeg process for one park. So I'm not sure, so is the policy then, are we getting rid of the policy? I mean, it seems to me a little confused, shall we say. You can come and lecture me about, oh, I guess you're against veterans or the
Guess we'll
elderly,
hear
or do
that
whatever
from
you
the
want.
movers in the
I'm just
second.
at the point of, I've been waiting multiple years. We've had people withdraw their names because they get so fed up with the wait. I guess if you can jump the queue, you can jump the queue. Good work by Councillor Wyatt doing that. I'll be back next month, I guess, with a lengthy list of people, one by one by one by one, and Councillor Lukes will probably do the same. Councillor Lukes has done some good work getting parks named in her ward. I'd be delighted to support this if we had a coherent procedure, but we don't. So we're trying to amend the procedure, so now we're going to exempt somebody from the procedure. I don't know. I mean, people pass away. Councillor Schreier passed away. We thought we had decades left of them. We didn't. So I would very much like to see a park named for this person. I'd like to see, however, parks named for the people in my ward who I nominated 3 years ago, and it's been trapped in the bureaucratic quagmire. And you can point fingers on that all you want, and I'm sure the Welcoming Winnipeg people would say, if you adequately directed us or resourced us, and God knows Mr. Armbruster there has been trying, to his credit, as did Michael Jack. So I'll support this when it comes around again. I might even support it today, but obviously the land rush will be coming. I'll have at least 3 at the next council meeting, and because you just can't start exempting people from certain policies and then rebuke the rest of us for following the policies. You just can't.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mays. Councillor Duncan, followed by Councillor Lard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief in my comments. Thank you very much for bringing this forward, Councillor Wyatt, and thank you very much for your service, as I had mentioned at the police WPA gala a few years ago, Mr. Lucky. I think Councillor Mays hit it on the head here. This is a process, and at the end of the day, council is supreme. So if we want to make a decision to vote on this today, it is up to council. It is not up to any SPC. It is not up to any committee that sits there. Council has this authority, and if we wish to exercise it, that's up to council. I look forward to anybody else bringing forward any other motions that require a suspension of rules that I can either support or not support, along with a lot of factual evidence that we can review. You know, the timing of this could have maybe come sooner, but at the end of the day, we make the decisions around here, and to pass the buck, probably not a great idea. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Lard?
So thank you, Madam Speaker. I have, well, first of all, welcome to Mr. Lucky, to Mr. Lucky, to the chamber. I've done a little bit of research regarding what appears to be exemplary work by this citizen for the city of Winnipeg, and I think I'll be supporting this this motion, but I do want to read a headline from BBC.com from September 27, 2023. Justin Trudeau apologizes after Nazi veteran honored in Parliament. So I raised this not to say that there's anything wrong with this particular nomination, but I think a modicum of vetting and a modicum of process would be good, because we don't have a lot of information other than the motion that's being presented to us today. And I find it to be unfortunate to have, well, I feel that I need to express these words in the presence of Mr. Lucky, who appears to have led a life of exemplary public service. And I think it's unfortunate the way this is coming forward. I noticed the mayor voted in opposition to suspending the rules. Sometimes people have exemplary public records, and there are things that we don't know about these people, and there's a reason that we have a process. The police board has a process on nominations. We've had quite a bit of media on that, and quite a bit of things can happen through that vetting process. And so I think this nomination looks to be a good one. I have no reason to believe that it's not a good one, but I also know that there hasn't been a thorough vetting process, and that if there is a list of names that comes forward from some of my colleagues, some of those names may be problematic, and we may not know that they are problematic until there's a headline like Justin Trudeau apologizes after Nazi veteran honored in Parliament. And so I believe I'll be supporting this. This process, with all due respect to my colleagues, is not good. It's very not good. So thank you, Mr. Lucky, for your service. I would hope that my colleagues in the future use a little bit more discretion with the influence that they have as local city councillors, and give due respect to their colleagues in terms of considering these nominations and having the time to do so, and being able to reflect and not have the person being honored in the chamber while we have these deliberations, because I don't think that's fair to Mr. Lucky either. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. There's quite a package that's circulated here before us. Councillor Chambers, shall I call on you to speak at this time, and maybe you can speak to the package before us?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do rise in support of this motion this morning. As you can see, there is a bit of a history of Mr. Lucky's service to the City of Winnipeg, which is predated by his service to the town or city of Transcona. You'll also see in the package that he has received commendations and letters of support by the previous Chief of Police, the current Chief of Police. He's received a letter of support by the late Nello Altemeyer, as well as myself. Again, this is all information that is contained within this package that alludes to not only the service that Mr. Lucky has provided, in a lengthy period, but also the sacrifices that his family has made, losing his daughter in the late 80s to a drunken driver, and again, as reiterating what I said earlier, losing his wife last year. This is a way of honoring the service that he provided to the city and a way of acknowledging the sorrow and pain that he felt as a father losing his daughter. Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to present this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Any further speakers? Councillor Gilroy?
So I want to rise because this isn't unfortunate. I did support allowing it to be heard, but I really do believe that we have a process here, and I really feel that it is unfortunate how this was brought forward. I'm even kind of uncomfortable with the fact that I'm not sure if as councillors we should be actually being the ones putting names forward. You know, that those should be coming from the community members. So I have, it's an uncomfortable issue that I have with that. I do think that we have a process. I signed on to the Indigenous Accord because I believe that we need to make changes here. And I feel really uncomfortable with the fact that I'm circumventing the rules in order to prioritize somebody, right? And so as much as I respect and want to honor the heritage of many people that come forward, that do crazy amount of wonderful things for our community, and I think that that's important that we recognize those people, but I want to make sure that we're following the rules and we're really honoring the process that we put forward in order to ensure that when we are naming things, we are having a process that is being reflective of everybody in our community. And so that's why I won't be supporting this moving forward. I do note that the councillor asked the family to be here for this debate, which, you know, I feel is unfortunate. But I do want to thank the person that's here today for his service. And this is not about the person, it's about a process that we really need as a city to follow. And I really caution us to really think about if we should be naming parks as councillors and if that should be coming from us. But anyways, I want to close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilroy. Any further speakers? Councillor Eadie?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise. I'm in favor of renaming a park for Mr. Lucky and his wife. I've had the honor of meeting him at a couple of Winnipeg police officers' galas, and seems like a fine, respectful man. Provided a lot of service to Transcona, and even when he City of Winnipeg amalgamates, and his wife, of course, a lot of good works. And so I'm supporting this, Madam Speaker. I'll be voting to allow this. I just wanted to speak to a couple of things. We are having the Welcome Winnipeg policy relooked at, coming back with something that could be workable. And you know, I'm not sure that the Indigenous community is really happy with any police officers today or decades in the past. We are on a path of reconciliation. I've signed the accord. But Mr. Lucky is a fine gentleman. There's no inappropriate activity. In fact, he's delivering the services to Winnipeggers and for all those years. But you know, I think the difficulty in thinking about this, there was that process, and I think I mentioned this, Madam Speaker, when I had seconded the motion by the mayor to have us reevaluate and relook at it. So reconciliation is not about retribution or revenge in terms of what happened in the past. Reconciliation is looking for opportunities actually to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of Winnipeg and Manitoba in our communities, because as I said in my thought of the day, for thousands of years, the Indigenous people were gathering here at the rivers quite often and living and moving around. And the Métis, of course, was the Red River Métis. So I think in reconciliation, we should be reflecting and looking at the opportunity for welcoming Winnipeg Committee to explore and look for ways that we could actually acknowledge the Indigenous Métis people of Winnipeg and Manitoba. And I think that would be an improved policy in that, because right now, really, the process is untenable. We heard from Councillor Mays, and I understand his frustration. And I'm just going to conclude, I wanted to mention that there are processes to have a vote on council through, not through the councillor, but you do not want to prevent a councillor from bringing forth a motion to name or rename something, because we're elected by the people of our wards. We represent those people. And, you know, we also vote that have an effect on people all over Winnipeg, all 15 of us today. But so I just want to leave that note. And I want to thank Councillor Wyatt for bringing forth Joe Lucky and his wife and renaming this park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reedy. Any further speakers? I can go to you, Councillor Wyatt, as the closer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank all the speakers. If I could just start with Councillor Mays, I definitely share Councillor Mays' frustration. I can assure Councillor Mays and other councillors, Councillor Larder spoke to this, that I've been holding off bringing parks forward when I saw last year Councillor Bawadi had a park in his ward that went through the process and had a negative recommendation, and I thought, well, I'm not sure how that's going to work. So that's why I held off on this. And then when I saw the motions come earlier this year with the mayor regarding the review of the policy, and the frustration is that what I was told, well, wait until the policy comes out, then bring it forward. And I was told that that will be July. And we know that sometimes could then become September, October. I didn't want to miss another season for the very nature of this dedication, because of Mr. Lucky and his youth. Let's put it that way. I can tell the council chamber that I have no less than 6 parks in brand new neighborhoods ready to be named with Indigenous names. I have one in an existing neighborhood to be named in a beautiful forest. But I've been waiting for this process, and I wish we could walk and chew gum at the same time, but it seems like we can't on this for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I don't want to dwell on that. But I have these names, not names, they're parks that can be named by elders, by the process, whatever process that is decided and with the new process coming forward. I have an Indigenous son. I have found great healing in the Indigenous teachings that I have received. And so I do this only because, yes, maybe I'm testing some members of council's patience, but my patience has been tested as well. I want to say that ultimately, Councillor Gilroy, I hear you, but we, as was pointed out by Councillor Reedy, we are representatives in a representative democracy, duly elected by our citizens. I like to think that we should be about results. Process is important, but ultimately we are held accountable by results, whatever that may be. And I can tell you this didn't come from myself, this did come from the community. I mean, you could see that I've been waiting. I have a letter here from Nella Altamar, who passed away earlier this year, a letter from last year. The support is, I've known Mr. Lucky. I want to thank Councillor Chambers also for seconding the motion and for his support. And for all members of council for suspending the rules. And I understand why the mayor voted not to suspend the rules, because he is respectful of the process that he's initiated, and I respect that. And I just want to say, Madam, and yourself supporting the mayor, Madam Speaker, I respect that as well. I met Mr. Lucky back when I was an executive assistant to Councillor Rick Boychuk. That's over 30 years ago. Joe and Isadora, always part of our community. You know, when Joe lost his daughter, and Isadora lost his daughter Patricia to a drunk driver in 1989, and I can only imagine if I lost a son to a drunk driver, it dramatically affected them. It dramatically affected them. But they carried on. Not only did they carry on, for all the years of service that he gave to the city of Winnipeg, the city of Transcona, town of Transcona, they carried on in community service. They gave of themselves, and I think that was part of the therapy of helping to deal with the loss of Patricia. Patricia was lost that day. Another young lady by Carrie Campbell was lost that day in the same car at the corner of Day and McMeans in 1989. And I can only imagine how that hollows somebody out. But he carried on, and Isadora, she was a beautiful woman, beautiful person. And they did community service. They delivered flyers for Rick Boychuk. They were involved in civic elections. They cared about the community, and Joe still does. He rides his bike. People say hi to him. He was actively practicing community-based policing at the time. And I know I would have preferred a different process, but this is what we have right now, and I don't want to wait and lose another season. I waited last year. I don't want to wait this year. I don't want to play roulette with God in terms of, I don't want to speak about that here today, to be honest with you, with Mr. Lucky here. And so I just would encourage members of council, and I appreciate that I know I'm testing the patient, but I also, please be assured, I have 6 parks ready to name Indigenous. And by the way, 2 months ago when the folks were here, the 2 doctors, I actually spoke, if you recall, in question period, I spoke about this with them, that I have these names, these parks. I want to get this going, to have Indigenous names. But now we've been told, hold back until the process is done. So I'm respecting that request that's coming from a higher office from me, other than this, because I can't wait. I've been waiting long enough. The community's been waiting, not I, the community's been waiting. And I think it's, in terms of any kind of, you know, the community has been so supportive of the Luckies with the loss of Patricia. And they've been supportive of us, Joe and Isadora, in so many ways. So those are my comments, Madam Speaker. I hope that the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Okay. There's 3 we'll note in opposition, and that's carried. Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Rollins, and Councillor Mays. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lucky, for being here. Mr. Lucky, thank you for being here. We now move on to bylaws, Mr. Mayor.
I move that bylaws number 10, 2025 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 10 of 2025.
I move that bylaw number 10, 2025 be read a third time, the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary, that's carried.
I move that bylaw number 45, 2025 be read a first time.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 45 of 2025.
Madam Speaker, I move that bylaw number 45 be read a second time.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 45 of 2025.
And I move that the rule be suspended and bylaw number 45 be read a third time, and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Contrary, carried. Okay, we'll now have question period for the mayor. Councillor Rowlands, followed by Councillor Orlikow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question for the mayor, Madam Speaker, regarding the transportation master plan that council proposed and passed. Recently, there were announcements that council has not looked at with respect to restrictions on payment. Does the mayor still support the transportation master plan and its recommendations? First question.
Thank you. If the councillor could be more specific related to what aspects of the transportation master plan.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands.
I assume this counts. So council passed the transportation master plan. Part of the transportation master plan was parking strategies for the downtown. The transportation master plan was a comprehensive document. The policy document laid out several policies that it would influence. One of them was the long-awaited 2021 commitment of council that we were going to have a downtown parking strategy, and that was a commitment we made to the downtown biz, the Exchange District biz, and within the transportation master plan, we told both biz zones, just wait for those. The transportation master plan outlined a forward-thinking downtown parking strategy. So the first question again, and I can fill everyone in, but the first question again is, does the mayor still support the transportation master plan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I want to thank the council for the question. I'll certainly take a look at the transportation master plan related to, I think she's, maybe ultimately referring to the changes Parking Authority has brought forward here recently. And certainly we'll take a look at all that in light of her question, just to get more specifics on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Third question.
Yes. Why did the mayor then proceed with public communications that celebrated a plan, including payment methods and rate considerations, without providing that long overdue strategic update to the downtown and the Exchange District business?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There's the report that came out with the department and the announcement recently looks at saving $3.6 million in capital costs to replace the pay stations, and then $1 million in operating costs each year. And really it's embracing the technology that over 80% of people that are parking in the downtown are using, while still making available to those that would use parking cards and scratch cards, making those methods of payment available to them as well. The department, if you look at news reports, has been talking about making this change since 2018. And so the news some of the specifics are new, but the move towards this transition has been talked about for several years.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, one short question. I know the second one was clarification. Go ahead.
Thank you. 4 of the 6 guiding principles in Winnipeg's parking strategy explicitly aims to support business investment, economic growth, goods movement, and downtown vitality. How does eliminating cash payment options without consultation or proposing parking rate hikes up to $20, as the chair of Property and Development suggested in the press, align with those principles?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Just to reiterate, once again, we still have paid parking that will be required on our streets. As this rolls out, I think that there's an important work to continue to do related to comms, communication, discussing matters, so that ultimately at the end of the day, customers can get the service that they need. I said that recently to media, whether it was picked up on or not. I said this ultimately is about ongoing communication to the customers. I know the department has more work to do on that. We all have more work to do. My office has more work to do to make sure that as this rolls out through the summer, that that everybody who needs information gets information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Orlikow, followed by Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. As we know, and unfortunately, maybe a generational thing is happening, City of Winnipeg is losing an enormous number of high-quality staff quick. Every week, there seems to be a new announcement of someone leaving, and especially there's the assessment branch, there's the property development branch, there's pretty well everywhere. But one glaring one I'm just interested still on is you can provide us an update on the CAO search.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Yes, so the CEO search, I believe is going well. The recruitment committee met recently, did interviews with a number of, I believe, high-quality candidates, and this was just in the last few days, in fact, earlier this week. And so I believe that the recruitment process is going, I believe it's going well, and I think we've got some really high-quality individuals who are, have put their name forward, wanting to be, the next CEO of the City of Winnipeg.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy?
Just to continue on the parking theme, is the mayor aware that the parking tickets that you're able to purchase is only available at the parking store?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I want to thank the council for the question. Yes, again, in my scrum yesterday, and obviously the media can't write everything or clip everything in a video. I did indicate at that point, and I continue to maintain, I think our parking authority needs to look at other options as to where those tickets may be available. That is very convenient for people all across the city. I think they need to look at making them available, places beyond the parking store for those individuals who may need those scratch tickets.
Thank you. Second question?
Will the mayor commit that prior to any of the physical changes of losing these meters, that they will be...
Okay. Councillor Gilroy, question?
Okay.
Or would you like to?
Will the mayor commit to prior to these meters being taken out, that these will be easily accessible? A lot of people in my ward, Madam Speaker, don't use a phone and really rely on those tickets.
Thank you. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor?
that's it. I will continue, I'll be communicating with the department. I encourage councillors to communicate with the department as well, related to the impact of this on their ward and how we can make sure that collectively the communication to the customers and to the stakeholders is strong. If it hasn't been strong enough to this point, that it's strong, clear, and helpful in the months ahead.
Thank you. Final question?
My last question is, why weren't the downtown councillors consulted prior to this happening, as it really is going to impact their wards?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Again, as I said a moment ago, this has been talked about since 2018 at least. I can't speak to the degree to which the department spoke to councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Mays?
Some of us took the Welcoming Winnipeg program seriously. Some of us worked to name parks for Inuit groups, as I did, Tunga-Sugit, in collaboration with the Indigenous Inuit community. Now that we are no longer giving any weight to that group's opinions, as shown by the exemption earlier today, can the mayor, that was the majority vote, Councillor Owens, so can the mayor advise, would he prefer all of the, obviously we should consider everything that's in the queue and consider jumping the queue, as we've just done. So would the mayor prefer all of that coming forward, say, at the July council meeting, or are we going to have an endless series of one-off debates about whether people are meritorious enough to justify jumping the queue? Some of us took this process seriously. Some of us have been waiting years because we were told repeatedly by the CAO to follow. Would the mayor prefer all at once to jump the queue? Well, let's just get everybody and have a big debate, or not?
Thank you. Thank you. I do think that's, frankly, I don't mind answering tough questions. I think that one's unfair.
Second question, please.
How are we to proceed then? Should we now wait? Those of us who have waited years, should we wait longer for whatever the review process is? We already heard from Welcoming Winnipeg in the debate around the mill project in Councillor Brawadi's ward that the people on that committee didn't feel their work was being taken seriously. So we're now voting to not hear from them at all. So would the mayor prefer that we simply take everything that's in the queue and deal with it in a one-off basis?
Councillor Mays, same question. I think Councillor Duncan said it well, Council Supreme. We saw something come forward earlier today.
Council
I'll
is
let the mayor
supreme. There
respond if he
is a
wishes.
policy we were told to follow. I
Thank you.
apologize to council for following the orders of the CEO to follow the policy and wait 3 years for people who are completely meritorious. So then, are we in order then to start bringing forward these renamings and simply avoiding the process, since we have now voted to not follow the process? So I won't ask the mayor's support on individual ones. That's not a fair question to the mayor, but how are we
Thank
to
you,
pro-
Councillor Mays.
how are we to proceed? How is
Thank
that
you.
question?
Mr. Mayor.
I did vote against suspension of the rules because my preference was that we continue on the path that we are on. Ultimately, when I lost that vote, then I look at the, the merit of the individual. So councillors are going to do at this point, I guess, what councillors are going to do. I still prefer that, we do have a report coming back from Welcome Winnipeg. I think that's a very important report. But of course, councillors will make their decisions as far as how they proceed.
Thank you. Next question. Seeing none, that concludes question period for the mayor. Okay. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move consent agenda items for May 5th. I move adoption for items 1 to 4.
Thank you. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. We'll now move into question period under this committee. Any questions for Councillor Santos? Okay. Seeing none today. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works. Councillor Lukes, the report.
Sure. Well, I'll pull number 2 and move 1 and 3.
Okay. 2 is the Transit Automatic Fare Collection Strategy. Call the question on 1 and 3. All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Item 2.
Madam Clerk?
Sorry. Item 2, Transit Automatic Fare Collection Strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Thank you. I just wanted to pull this just to highlight that at the Public Works Committee, we had a very good, robust discussion with the Public Service on the recommendation, the silver option that we're moving towards to develop a new payment system for transit. And I guess I just wanted to highlight all the work that we're doing in transit to make our transit system better, easier to use for the public. So this movement now to an automatic fare collection strategy is looking at faster payment, different ways to do payment. The department will be looking through all the product that we offer, looking to reduce some of the paper-based product, and we'll be coming back with a report on any changes they are going to be recommending to the actual sort of list of product that we offer. So I think this is very exciting. I just wanted to highlight again that we're heavily investing in improving transit to serve the citizens of Winnipeg better. We heard loud and clear that people wanted improved transit. We're doing our route change right now, which, there we go, that word change. We're doing the route change. We've got a lot of questions. I just wanted to remind councillors that if you wanted to do a session in your ward, we've got transit trainers that will come out. All you have to do is just book the date. I think Councillor Duncan, Councillor Gilroy, Chambers, myself, we're doing some sessions just to have the travel trainers come out and talk about these new changes to the routes. And yeah, so I just wanted to pull this to highlight that we're doing good work on transit. It is significant funding to make these changes, but we move, tens and hundreds of thousands of people a year through transit. So I think it's very important. And once the changes once the dust has settled from the changes, I think we're going to see a dramatically improved transit system.
Thank you. Any further speakers on item 2?
Yeah.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise this morning in support of this item on the agenda. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Lukes on her leadership of the Public Works Standing Policy Committee. In discussion about the automated pay fare system, again, I asked some questions during the Standing Policy Committee whether this would be an opportunity to improve the outcomes for the ride operators. Again, where there is that dispute with regards to fares, it can result in the abuse of the ride operator. And again, this is an opportunity to, again, have better outcomes for the ride operators where an individual who is using transit services can pay with options that are available to them upon boarding the bus. So again, I think this is a great opportunity for transit. I think it's a great opportunity for the ride operators, an opportunity to reduce the amount of fare evaders. Again, having different options available to them for payment, I think will provide better transit service to the citizens of Winnipeg. So again, thanking Councillor Lukes on her leadership on the Standing Policy Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Any further speakers? Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the folks at Transit for moving forward with this report. Again, during the budget working group process, one of the things that we noticed was, we're having challenges with fare evasion, with the PEGO product even working. PEGO has not been a very successful fare system here in the city of Winnipeg, I'd argue, since the get-go. Budget working group, we decided let's try to move forward the funding and the rollout of new fare products. Transit has been very busy. The whole customer service team has obviously been very busy with the whole rollout of the new frequent transit network, so being able to do this at the same time certainly stretched the resources, so I do appreciate the work they've done there. I'm very fortunate. I have the opportunity personally to be able to travel here and there, and one of the things I've experienced in other jurisdictions is far superior transit products. The ability to pay with contactless, cards in your wallet, with getting a QR code in Calgary to pay for your fare without setting up an account, getting a QR code that you can read on a bus. I was in Australia earlier this year, and interesting that we're having this conversation at the same time as we're talking about phasing out cash and parking meters. The buses in the Gold Coast of Australia do not take cash. You have to purchase a fare product before you get on the bus, whether it's at a depot or using some sort of, or using like your card. So it's modernization. It's going to make things better. I truly do believe, whether it's a bank card, a credit card, or a fare product that you buy. Again, right now, of course, with PEGO cards, you can charge them up at 7-Eleven, as well as at Shoppers Drug Mart stores in the city of Winnipeg. So there are alternatives if, again, for people who don't have, that want to use cash to continue using the products. Things like fare capping. New York City, they have a weekend fare. You max out at a certain number of dollars using the subways and buses in New York is if you keep using the same credit card, for example, for tapping. That's something they're looking at, whether it be a weekend, a week, a month, or a year. They can set up fares so that frequent users, to encourage frequent use, can cap out at a certain point. So again, I'd like to thank the Public Works Committee, the Budget Working Group, and everybody at Transit for moving this forward. There are still steps to go, but it looks like we're moving towards having a modern transit fare payment system here in the city of Winnipeg. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brawadi. Seeing no further speakers, Councillor Lukes to close. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of item 2? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. Oh, yes, we need to do question period first. Thank you. Any questions for the chair for Councillor Lukes? Councillor Eady.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given that the Parking Authority is falling under Public Works, I believe. Madam Speaker, with this new change, getting rid of the pay stations out on the streets, there's some misnomers out there that I was listening to on CBC Radio this morning. And so my question is, Madam Speaker, are there provisions to allow people to use their debit cards, not just credit cards, to make payment through an app or through the telephone which is there? And maybe she could explain that. I think we need to keep reiterating that most people driving cars do have a bank account and a debit card. Many people in low income do not have credit cards, but they do have cars. They find a way, ability to have cars, and they will often end up downtown. So can you confirm, Madam Speaker, I'm wondering if the Chair of Public Works can confirm that people will be allowed to use their debit cards to make parking payments?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Yes, I can confirm that. I was looking for the press release to pull it up quickly, but yes, you can use your debit card also to pay, and you can phone in your debit card. One thing I do want to say is, and I mean, it's not really directly to the question of the councillor, but the parking authority did start a strategy, a plan back before the pandemic, got delayed, as did the Transportation Master Plan. The Transportation Master Plan is coming forward. The Parking Authority will have their plan come forward for consultation. They will be doing consultation on the big picture parking plan for downtown and for the city of Winnipeg. We expect that to come forward late or in July or September. It is on the Engage website. We've been waiting for this, but due to the pandemic, due to the transportation plans delay, the parking strategy comes after the Transportation Master Plan.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Reedy, second question.
I just wanted to point out, she did answer my second question, but just on a little bit of a note, I'm not sure of all the things, but how you pay isn't necessarily part of a parking strategy? Question?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Sorry, what was that question?
Essentially, Madam Speaker, the question is how you pay for your parking is probably a very small component of a parking strategy for downtown and elsewhere in the city?
Sure, how you pay is a small component of it. What you pay and when you pay, I think, are the big factors.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to rise and ask the chair the question and just let her know that I did do a forum yesterday on the transit changes, and I want to thank the two members that came out. It was very, very helpful for the people that were there, wanting to really learn about the new changes. But my question to follow up, in this process, I did learn that the paper copies, that they're no longer going to be having paper copies, and my area really requires paper copies, and I think that it is like really cheap, like the city can be doing paper copies. So my question is, can we look at bringing back paper copies, especially for people that are in, in areas where they just don't have cell phones?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
So we have mentioned this, noted it, it is in the toolkit that the city will be providing paper copies of the entire route, of the entire system, I should say. What's challenging to provide paper copies is it's not like now we've got the spine and feeders, so it's not like it's a route to go somewhere like the old system, right? It's not like a route to go somewhere. It's almost like you need the entire understanding of the network versus just like the Route 74 or something. So we can talk about this more. I'll talk about it offline, and we'll look at what we can do. I totally hear what the councillor's saying.
Thank you. Councillor Rollins, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, a similar question to the mayor. How does eliminating cash payment options without consultation or proposing parking rate hikes of up to $20, like her EPC colleague did in the media, align with the principles of the Transportation Master Plan and the policies that have been long awaited? She rightly points out it's on Engage Winnipeg. It's on the website, a holdover from 2021 and reconfirmed in 2022. First question.
Sorry, what is the first question again? I just want to be clear.
So
on this.
how does eliminating cash payment options without consultation to businesses or proposing parking rate hikes of up to $20 that I found out and my BizZone found out through the words of your council colleague, and I will, Madam Speaker, stick a pin in a future question for Councillor Duncan, but proposing parking rate hikes of up to $20 for the downtown align with the principles associated with the Transportation Master Plan.
Okay, so I really have no idea about the $20 for downtown parking rates. That's news to me.
Speaker, I have another question.
Okay.
Other municipalities like Edmonton
Right to the question, please.
have integrated parking changes into their budgeting process. Winnipeg has failed to offer the same level of transparency to the biz partners. When these organizations
Question,
are
please.
instrumental in developing and supporting the strategies that council has endorsed, does the chair of Public Works see that as important?
So through my role as Chair of Public Works, I've worked very closely with the downtown biz, the West End biz, the Osborne Village biz, related to many public works initiatives. Probably my fault. I assumed the parking authority, and I haven't got an answer back yet from them, but I assumed that they would be talking to the downtown bizes about the removal of the parking meters. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I'm not sure. I've left it up to them, which maybe I shouldn't have done that, because I'm hearing that they weren't clear on this. So I need to do further clarity from the parking authority on really what sort of communication went on. I know communication isn't sometimes as adequate as we'd like. I'm optimistic, we've got new communication people coming to lead the charge. I think our communication system will be much greatly improved, but that doesn't address the issue right now. So I will report back to you, Councillor Rowlands, when I hear from the parking authority on what engagement they actually had.
Thank you. Final question?
As a chair, the departments often will bring forward risk lists that imply what they will have to do
Question,
should they not
please,
have the
Councillor
budget.
Rowlands.
Did the chair recall this in her discussions with the Winnipeg Parking Authority during budget?
No, I didn't. I wasn't on the Budget Working Committee, and I didn't, even though we did get a briefing, I didn't have a risk list that I recall seeing from the Winnipeg Parking Authority on the meter removal program.
Thank you. Councillor Eadie?
Yeah, just quickly, Madam Speaker, did you know that while I was working, sitting as the president of the Selkirk Avenue Biz and actually doing the administrative work, that we received a number of parking authority requests for consultation? Yes, it was before COVID. There wasn't really any mention of the pay stations, but Madam Speaker, over the years, did you also know that there were several complaints through my office that went through that the machines weren't working, and this is how the WPA came to a conclusion: we just can't afford to utilize these pay stations anymore. So did you know?
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Good to know. And I do find that we've had, challenges, let's say with the Transportation Master Plan, with the pedestrian cycling plan, with the transit plan. When we did consultations all before pandemic, then pandemic and minds went in all other directions, and it just seems like we didn't do consultations, but we did, or we did them through the pandemic. So yeah, it's difficult working through a glitch like that in the whole line of communications and projects. So very well, people may have been consulted back in 2020, which seems like an eternity ago. And and that's a challenge that we're having to face and deal with now.
Thank you. Next question by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to the chair. Are you aware that there are approximately 35,000 commercial parking spots in the downtown area?
That I am, yes.
Thank you. Second question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Are you aware, Madam Chair, that of those 35,000 commercial parking spots, many of them controlled by, I won't name the company, are still cash payments?
That I am, because I only got the app a couple weeks ago, so I'm very familiar with that. Yes, cash payments.
Thank you. Final question.
Are you also aware that we are frequently criticized and at times supported by some downtown councillors to get rid of those surface parking spots to develop residential, which would further reduce the ability to pay with cash?
Yes, and I will say very proudly that we had an appeal committee hearing the other day in Councillor Gilroy's ward, and I think we're blowing up 2 of those parking lots for development for 150 units.
Thank you. That concludes question period under this committee. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. There's no reports today, no motions. We'll get right into question period. Any questions for our chair, for Councillor Bawadi? Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, Madam Speaker, it is now May. I'm just wondering, in terms of preparation for the 2026 budget, is there anything that the councillor could shed us some light on in terms of that work? For example, is he prepared to share if a direction has been given to staff in terms of the terms of reference being the targeted tax hike in terms of coming forward with some preliminary work for the budget working group, when that should be? They usually are directed early to start assembling that work, and just anything else that he might be prepared to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Through you to my colleague from Transcona. Following last year's budget and as part of the budget recommendations, the establishment of a budget savings group was formed, and I continue to work with Councillors Allard and Councillor Duncan on meeting with the public service to find additional savings throughout the fiscal year. Again, going back to the mayor's political commitment from the last election of 3.5%, that is definitely where we are focusing our energies to get the tax increase back to the 3.5% that was promised through his political commitments. We certainly face challenges. The ongoing tariffs, the ongoing inflationary costs. You know, I keep hearing about, the price of a fire truck has doubled in 5 years. Things like that are certainly making the finances of the city hard. I mean, Winnipeggers recognize when they go to the store, things are costing significantly more than in the past. So we are certainly working to make sure that Winnipeg is not exasperating the affordability crisis that I think many people are experiencing. But again, we are certainly working with the public service to get the budget in line and ready for presentation later this year.
Thank you. Second question, Councillor Wyatt, right to it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to Councillor Bawadi. It's more, are you aware question that when I had the opportunity to be chair of ASD, Alternative Service Delivery, I might even have the file still in my basement, that I keep a lot of files on a lot of things, including many of you. But no, I'm just kidding. I had many initiatives underway at the time with Mr. Ruda, what I like to call a friendly call the firewall, to try to find savings, and that there are maybe possible suggestions I'd be prepared to share confidentially with Councillor Bawadi that in terms of targeted savings within the organization. Some of these may be low-hanging fruit, some of them might be more politically challenging or economically challenging, but just are you aware?
Thank you. Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Through you to my colleague, we are certainly willing to look under any rock, in any seat, and any couch cushion to find savings opportunities for the City of Winnipeg, and whether it's more appropriate to handle those, offline and privately. We're certainly looking for both, easy short-term wins as well as the more significant and even capital-intensive sometimes options if that brings us the proper long-term savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Final question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Brawadi. That we've been receiving, as you are you aware, we've been receiving lots of calls from residents about their tax bills. Are you aware that once I explained two things, the shift occurring within our assessment base because of the shift between industrial, commercial, mostly industrial over to residential, that pie is shifting, putting more on the residential, and that the cap of the $1,500 on the tax credit, once that's calculated, it was a gentleman 13%, he said his taxes up. When we talked about that, then all of a sudden, boom, now it was in line with the tax increase that we had brought forward. So are you aware that maybe is there an opportunity to do better communication with the public in that regard so that they understand what is happening? We're losing our tax base to the rural municipalities and the industrial because they've got half the mill rate and no business tax. And then on top of that, the cap from the province, which has affected a lot of properties, that $1,500 cap, believe it or not, even in my ward.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. We've got the question. Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I could use my remaining 10 minutes here for question period to bore you to death on all sorts of tax impacts from even just the changes in the last couple of years. I do encourage all my colleagues, for that matter, to look at the communications that have come from the public service in the last couple of days, as well as even the fairly, again, our media don't have a ton of time to do in-depth stories. I think the Free Press did a very good job today summarizing some of the things that do impact taxes. The one thing that Councillor, my colleague from Transcona, mentioned is the fact that the portion of the roll that is comprised of residential properties has grown compared to commercial and industrial properties over the last 20 years. While they've appreciated in value, commercial properties overall, as a percentage of the roll, they are less because residential properties have increased faster, in the last, many years. Sure, the Office Towers of Portage and Main, they're assessed at a higher value than they were 25 years ago, but they have not grown nearly as fast as residential properties. So that certainly has been part of the impact. The fact that, again, we have school divisions with some fairly dramatically different mill rates causes significant discrepancies in what a house would pay in education taxes from one part of the city to the other. Madam Speaker, your school division, one that I have part of as well as Councillor Santos, has a much higher mill rate than Pembina Trails School Division out in West Winnipeg, to the point where a typical home is paying a fair bit more. The point where you max out that $1,500 credit is dramatically different. I think the province's communications at budget time saying, here's a home value and here's what the difference is, was very misleading because that was not the case universally across school divisions here in the city of Winnipeg, at least. So, again, I thank him for those questions, and I do think there's an opportunity to better communicate with all residents what the magic formula is, the magic box that impacts what people pay for property taxes, both from the city of Winnipeg as well as education taxes to the province. I know one paper here in the city of Winnipeg indicated that, the mayor and council are responsible for the entire tax load. That is blatantly untrue. We have nothing to do with setting school division taxes. It's like blaming, the example I use is, an $800 TV at Costco. Here it's, 12% sales tax. In Alberta, it's 5%. It'd be like blaming Costco for that TV being $56 more in Winnipeg than it is in Calgary. That is not accurate, and that's what one local paper was trying to suggest. So, again, it's confusing. Obviously, some people don't get it.
Thank you, Councillor Brawadi. There was one other question. Councillor Orlikow.
Just to follow up for Councillor Wyatt, no, I'm not going to, not fully there, but Councillor Wyatt reminded me of another point regarding the efficiency drive that we're looking for that was in our budget. I'm hoping there are a number of seasoned councillors that have gone through this in the past, seen the ideas, and there's new councillors too that may have bright ideas as well. We all know that change is going to be is coming. We can't stay on the same path as we have. The city is struggling just to maintain herself. So I'm hoping that in the future there will be an opportunity for your three groups or with the administrator, with our CFO, to meet with councillors to get some ideas and feedback. It may be SOAs, it may be whatever. It doesn't matter, because in the day it's going to land on the table. And we all are going to either, and like we're learning today, people don't like to be surprised, especially councillors. So if you could find a way to involve the whole council, either, and I'm not sure what method, I know you guys are busy, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Barwadi?
Thank you very much. Through you to my colleague, I certainly appreciate the invitation, and I'm more than happy to take up any councillor that would like to meet at any time. Well, within reason, to share their ideas, to flush out things, to go down some rabbit holes, to look for changes to the way the city operates, to find savings, and yeah, again, we compared to other orders of government, I think we have some pretty good efficiencies, but there's always room for, I think, further improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, back to the education tax matter. Recently, in one of the media outlets, someone from the school divisions of Manitoba indicated, I think their quote was something along the lines that school divisions are the most transparent in adopting their budget process, given that some of them go in camera to vote on their budgets. Would the chair like to comment on that?
Thank you very much. Thank to you through to Mayor Gillingham. Again, yeah, it does appear some school divisions do go in camera. I'm not going to pretend to follow as closely the other 6 school divisions or 7 school divisions in the city of Winnipeg as to all of their exact procedures for debating budgets. But again, even at the City of Winnipeg, when we have open houses, when we invite public participation, interest is fairly limited. The public, I think, elects us with the expectation that we're going to have their best interests at heart. I think we're very open and transparent in terms of what we present. There's lots and lots of information in our publicly facing budget books, in the presentations that we have, and the opportunities to allow the public to come and speak and present and share their thoughts, opinions, and we have a lot of public forums. There's typically a month of opportunity from the budget tabling to the budget passing, where any member of the public can reach out to any one of us if they have any thoughts. It's our process is, I think, quite public, and again, I'm not familiar with every school division, but I don't see that necessarily from the ones in the City of Winnipeg.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce the report of May 8th, 2025, and move adoption of the consent agenda, items 1 to 13.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to step down item 1, 4, and 9. 9, I'd have to declare conflict fiduciary.
1, 4, and 9, you have a conflict?
On 9, I have a conflict.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Mays?
Pull item 8, please.
Okay, anything further? Okay, thank you. I'll call the question on 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10 through 12, and 13. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Item 1, Portage and Main intersection, decommissioning study of the concourse.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from my council colleague on the extension of time here of 90 days. I look forward to hearing back from the public service following that 90 days with a plan here that we can debate around the council table.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Wyatt?
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you. I just want to rise to put some of my comments on the record that I expressed at the Standing Committee. First of all, I think we should be cognizant of the fact the city that the ship has sailed in terms of the vote of opening, closing Portage and Main. That's happening. Now, the issue in terms of the concourse, not so clear. I just want to put some comments on the record, and that is this, that in the event the concourse is decommissioned, let us not forget it will have significant impacts on our assessment values in that neighborhood. In other words, you can be guaranteed that all the towers will be appealing their assessments the minute that concourse is decommissioned. They will also be appealing their assessed values inside of Winnipeg Square. I know the mayor has said in the past that it's about $1 million apparently to operate the concourse. I would suggest to you that the reassessed values will rival that in terms of actual lost dollars to the city of Winnipeg. So much so that the Winnipeg Square itself, which has multiple shops, if you go down there during the day, especially let's say at lunchtime, you could see the traffic of people going through the concourse from the various towers that are not on that corner, 3 other towers, and making their way into Winnipeg Square. That will be reduced significantly if the concourse is decommissioned, especially we know our weather in this city. People go underground, they avoid the weather. People here in this very chamber use the very walkway underneath Main Street to get their vehicle. You know what I'm talking about. So we will see a significant devaluation of the assessed values. We will probably see a lot of boarded up shops, I would predict to you, inside Winnipeg Square if we go ahead with the decommissioning. So I would love for this report to be called the Decommissioning Possible Rehabilitation of Winnipeg Square versus just a possible decommissioning. Second part of this I want to just put it on the record, as I said in the committee, Madam Speaker, is that we as a council in January of 2023 found upwards of $30 million, and the report warned us as high as potentially $50 million, to rehabilitate the parkade for vehicles only a few blocks away at the Millennium Library. We've dipped into our debt capacity to do this for the parking authority. It was questionable about the study. I raised lots of questions on their the analysis that the Winnipeg Parking Authority conducted, where they were the jury and the decider. They were the both parties. There was not an independent lens to provide whether or not we should go ahead ourselves, or we should sell that parkade, or what
Councillor
benefit.
Wyatt, you're aware it's an extension of time before us?
Yes.
The item is an
I
extension
am.
of
I'm
time.
just pointing out the fact, Madam Speaker, that the parkade, we have the ability, in other words, to renovate a parkade for vehicles underground, but you don't have the ability, it seems, to renovate a walkway for pedestrians. And for those who have spoken and advocated for pedestrians over and over again in so many ways, cycling and everything else, pedestrian traffic in the heart of downtown at Portage and Main, the concourse underneath, I think, any other city does not, once they establish a concourse underground, Montreal has them all over the place. They're not decommissioning them, they're maintaining them. It's a sign of a city that we have a bridge that is closed called the Arlington Bridge, and now we're talking about decommissioning something that was visionary at its time. Maybe you could argue the closing of Portage and Main wasn't. That was a debate we had. That debate's over. But keep the concourse open is absolutely crucial, or else we're going to be hit right in the pocketbook in our assessment values, and you're going to see a direct impact. The tower they put above Winnipeg Square with all the residential will not be enough. That's not enough traffic to support the shops that are down there now. Those shops down there now do not. Their business, folks, is basically 9 to 5, and then after that, that shopping mall is dead. There's not much activity in there. They rely on those towers to make ends meet. You close down the concourse, you're going to have reassessments across the board, and they will be successful. They hire Altus, they hire third parties. The third parties usually successfully take the case to the Board of Revision, and that Board of Revision will allow the reassessments, I can guarantee you, and there'll be a certain percent, and you will see the Altus and all these companies who do that they earn what, they eat what they earn based on their reassessed values and what they get a percentage of that, but their clients, being those towers and all the shops in Winnipeg Square, they'll be doing it jointly with these companies, I can guarantee you. Let's look at keeping this facility open. If we found the money for the parkade only a few blocks away for cars, we can find the money for pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Any further speakers? Back to you, Councillor Duncan, for close. And call the question.
No, we call the question. Thanks.
Okay, call the question on the extension of time. All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Councillor Wyatt, you're noted in opposition. Thank you. Item 4, Madam Clerk.
Item 4, reallocation of residual strategic facilities master plan capital program budget to the 2025 Health, Life Safety, Emergency Systems Refurbishment Citywide Accessibility Capital Program budget.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I'll hear from my council colleague.
Councillor Wyatt.
I simply sit this down, Madam Speaker, so just to shed some light, I've been learning a little bit about our accessibility budgets or lack thereof, or budgets that were closed recently that we had once a time at this city that assisted us with building ramps, building elevators, capital money that was once available, that was phased out partly under, I believe, Mayor Bowman, from what I've been able to do the research on, that would be wonderful to reestablish in terms of accessibility that we once had in terms of capital. Because, you know, just the other day I got an email from wasn't a constituent, it was a resident of another person's ward who had rented a hall at one of my community clubs, only to find out that their so-called the elevator to the upper hall where they're having a function was broken, and so the person in a wheelchair couldn't get to the upper hall. And to me, when I fell, if you recall, at the last election, I was on that little scooter when I rolled into the chamber here when we were getting our swearing in, until you actually experience a disability, until you actually feel it, which for the first time in my life, the inability to properly walk, you can't really appreciate what some folks are going through and what they go through in life. And I gained a new sense of appreciation for accessibility issues. And so I wanted to raise this. I want to thank Councillor Eadie for all the work he's done in the past on accessibility. And if there's any way we can reestablish the capital programs that were once available to help community groups, especially city facilities, to upgrade themselves, I think that'd be a very positive thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Seeing none, Councillor Duncan to close. I can call the question.
Thank you.
All in favor of item 4? Contrary? That's carried. Madam Clerk, item 8.
Item 8, closing portion of Craddock Avenue east of St. Mary's Road, DAC 1 of 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This was an interesting item that came to P&D. At first, there was a little confusion around this being a public hearing and new information being brought forward. That was clarified that on road closures, that is not the case. So this being a closing of Craddock Avenue, that did not apply. So we did hear from Public Works at the time that said, you know, tap the brakes here, consider that we might be looking at this portion as a future off-ramp from Abinogi-Mekina onto St. Mary's. At that point in time, having that new information and in combination with not having an actual plan before us that included housing units, I did not support this. I did not support this at EPC as well. And unfortunately, I won't be able to support the amendment made at EPC here today. So, you know, we do have to have some look to the future, as we've discussed on a few other items today, and this is one of them, to ensure that we're not handcuffing ourselves when our city continues to grow. You look at the immense growth in the South End now, and the continued growth that's coming in the future. I don't know that it would be in our best interest to put that at risk for one development. I will say that perhaps some more due diligence should take place by the public service, especially when they're putting forward an extensive report that includes our malls and corridors, and this being included in that. That might have been an oopsie a lack of communication between departments, but we're working on that. We're trying to get people out of their silos and to look at everything that might come up in these future plans for Winnipeg as we continue to grow and expand. But I look forward to hearing from my council colleague.
Thank you. Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to thank the Mayor and those members of APC who did support this reversal of what was concluded at Planning Department Committee, Property Committee. There was as you can see, there was a public hearing. Riel Community Committee voted unanimously in favor of the road closing. 39 registered people in support, 0 against. So the opposition was from the public service. So to sit here and be told repeatedly that we're now all thinking like housing departments and the whole public service is thinking like a housing department, and then to come to a hearing, and I have met with these people for years, I met with them dozens of times. So the entire rationale against it, aside from it'll be harder to pick up garbage at 2 houses, pretty easily solved, was in order to facilitate future growth in the south end of Winnipeg, Abinogi-Mickinaw, including the intersection at St. Mary's, will need to be improved. No further specifics. The proposed development that will be facilitated by this closing is unlikely to be compatible with these improvements. Is it an off-ramp? Is it a tunnel? No specifics, no map, no drawing. So you have the following. The original draft of the Transportation Master Plan says, you know, we were going to make improvements to St. Mary's Road further north to deal with congestion, and that was to be done by 2021 under the last Transportation Master Plan. We're going to move that to 2050. We're going to delay that 30 more years. So lots of work by me. Kudos to the department. Thanks to Councillor Lukes. The Transportation Master Plan, if we ever see it, will say, no, we should be much more. We're doing a study. We don't need to delay that 30 years. We don't need to delay a problem that we identified in 2005 for 50 years. So here we're saying, well, we got to get going. We can't allow housing because we might need a future roadway there. So we have the following. Here we are trying to facilitate housing growth on malls and corridors. It's undoubtedly in a corridor. It is undoubtedly eligible for the infrastructure money that we've approved under the Housing Accelerator Fund, because that only applies to certain corridors. However, the Public Works Department is saying no, because we might need it for a future improvement. We're not going to tell you what that is. We're not going to give you any specifics on that. We just might need it later. There's a hydro corridor in between this site and Abinogi-Mickinaw. Don't worry about that. We might need the road, maybe later. The road's about 50 meters long, I would say, what's left of the road. So I won't get into the details on this, and Councillor Duncan and I have talked about it. He's been respectful, and it is an interesting file, but the frustration of going to a hearing where you have 39 people in favor of it, no one opposed, and the staff are saying, no, we don't like it, but we won't give you any specifics, we just don't want it, because we might need to put a major roadway in there. So what you need to do instead is put in a bunch of fourplexes that won't be popular on nearby streets, and that'll mean we don't have to do major road projects because we'll save all this money. The mind boggles. I mean, here we are. The mayor ran on the malls and corridors piece. I voted for that, trying to emphasize housing. As the applicant said, I'm not near one rapid transit line. I'm near 2 rapid transit lines because it's almost right at the corner of Abinogi-Mickinaw and St. Mary's Road. So here you have a piece of land on a corridor, and we're being told how all the city departments are thinking like housing departments now, and yet we have opposition. The only opposition comes from the public service. So we'll have a public hearing in a couple of weeks. It'll take a week maybe about certain aspects of 4plexes, 3plexes. There'll be a lot of people in favor. There'll be a lot of people opposed. We'll try and find a made in Winnipeg solution. I certainly hope we're not going to be told, hey, if we do this, we won't have to do major road projects, because we're already voting to do that, as I indicated earlier. Here we have the public service saying, no, don't do this thing on a corridor that everyone seems to favor, because we might need it later for a major road project, but we're not going to, we don't know when. We don't know when. Abinogi-Mi'kmaq is almost 50 years old now. We haven't needed it to date. We might need it in another 50 years or 100 years. We might. And the frustration of this, you're trying to come up with a housing policy on the malls, on the corridors. You have one part of the public service saying we're going to delay the road project in your ward by 30 years to deal with congestion. But we might need to do a major road project down here at the south end, so don't put in the housing where there's no opposition. I mean, it's just incredibly frustrating. So, for today, I'm certainly supportive of what EPC recommended. My thanks to the mayor, who seems to have listened on this one. My thanks on that. So, it's a corridor piece. We're trying to do malls and corridors. That's what people ran on. So, let's move forward with this. It'll be very tricky to work out the details. They'll have to come forward with a specific proposal. My thanks to Councillors Chambers and Allard for supporting it at Riel. But I got to say, if we're saying the public service is all thinking like a housing department, I'm going to have to say, well, on this one, I'm going to think like a housing department, and I'm going to vote for housing here. And maybe I'll oppose some of the changes that are coming in a couple of weeks, and people will say I'm against housing. But then I'll remind you of this. I'm the guy trying to get this thing built so we can have a housing on a corridor near rapid transit lines. So I think it's a very good project. I hope to see it go forward. I hope people support what EPC voted to do.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Chambers, followed by Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When this came before us at Riel Community Committee, I was very impressed in terms of how the proponents are planning to incorporate both business and residential units into this redesign and redevelopment of this space. So I'm supportive of the road closure. Again, hearing the comments that were made by the public service with respect to potentially needing this space for an off-ramp. Again, this is about housing. This is about housing on a transit corridor. This is about a business being able to maintain its presence in the community and potentially expand its presence in the community. They've been a great business for the community for these many years, and the opportunity to further develop this location to include residential housing, to include the expansion of their business, I think will be a great opportunity for the local community. So I'm in support of this project, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Allard?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be supporting the recommendation from the Riel Community Committee. I don't always agree with Councillor Mays on infill issues, but I do agree with Councillor Mays in this point. I think this is an example where we can raise the values of our lands, as far as I understand it, and if there's information that points otherwise, I would be happy to take that new information. But land being held since like 1972 that could be used as for a functional design for public works plan that we know will not happen, given that we're already studying a new plan after we studied after we studied the Marion Archibald road widening and overpass project, which came in at a $460 million class 4. We call it $800 million class 3. Maybe, I guess my point being, I think this is an example of looking to the future, but looking to the future with the wrong lens. I think we need to have we need to take these opportunities to increase the values of our lands, which reduces the tax burden, as opposed to freezing development on lands for possible future, probably will not happen projects, which have been, the latter has been my experience with over 10 years now as city councillor. I'm concerned about the opportunity cost that results from these types of recommendations. the public market lands, the Packers lands in St. Boniface, there was de facto expropriation, well, maybe not, it's not called that, prescriptive easement on the lands in that development, which resulted in what can only be a reduction in the lift of the values of those lands, which just squeaked by this council. So I wonder at how many opportunities are not happening, how many projects are not happening because of these types of rules. I've heard things like looking to the future and vision. I think if you look to the future and you look at things like turning ramps on streets, I don't imagine that's the type of city that we'll be living in with all of the changes that are happening with transit, active transportation, ride share services, car share services. The city is densifying as that missing middle housing is materializing, as Councillor Mays has pointed out. I think we're using an old set of tools, and I think we're leaving lands undeveloped for the wrong reasons, and I think we need to readjust that somehow. And in St. Boniface Ward, there's a beautiful new 42-unit building going up. There was a similar objection from Public Works saying, how are we going to get the utility trucks in and out of the back lane? And we don't recommend this development. We recommend the lane be made bigger to fit Public Works standards. And I don't blame Public Works for that. That is their standard. That is presumably the council approved standard. But that's a case where a building may not have happened because of a standard that, if you know the site, would take probably 200 years in order to be achieved for that length of, or that the lane to be as wide as the Public Works Department wanted to see it. So, I mean, yesterday we heard the Public Service talk about how they had respected our zoning bylaw, our Winnipeg Complete Communities. It came to appeals, and urban densification champion Councillor Orlico moved the motion to have it built, because it was obvious to us generalists that having, how many units, Councillor Lukes? Having 150 units right beside the University of Winnipeg made sense. And that's another almost failed development where there's going to be a clear lift to the net value of our lands, and that's going to reduce the tax burden throughout the city, because there's the developer shall, at no cost to the city, construct all the things required for that particular development in the heart of our downtown, right by the University of Winnipeg. So I think there is room for the generalist. If we listen to every single department, I remember reading this in one of the books on how to build cities, urbanism. If we listen to every department, every group on how to build a city, we would end up with having nothing left. There'd be no room for buildings. They would be, you would see roads that would be wide enough to accommodate levels of service for perceived traffic in 20 years from now, which, I mean, I believe will be adjusted in other ways, such as transit, active transportation, car share, Uber, etc., as the world changes, as energy costs rise. But they illustrated how if you were to eliminate the generalist or the politician to make these calls, you would end up with these ridiculous urban forms that would not serve, well, would not make for a livable city, a city that anybody would want to live in. Imagine lane after lane after lane, and then biking facilities, and then transit facilities, and then a back lane to conform to the levels of service of Public Works. That kind of thinking doesn't work in mature and existing neighborhoods where there's already a built structure. So I know I made a very general speech about a very specific application, but generally speaking, if we have an opportunity to put buildings up on land, that raises the value of our land portfolio. When we hold it and stop development, it leaves that land appreciating in value much more slowly than it would if we put a building on it, which almost immediately reduces the tax burden. And I think the building on Provencher is beautiful. I think it's fine. I think it's going to help businesses in the area. It's going to help feed our transit master plan. It's going to have buses going down Provencher every 5 minutes. That building might not have happened had we followed the Public Works recommendation, which, in their defense, is probably in our council policies to have lanes that are of that size. So I'm out of time. Please vote with the Riel committee recommendation and Executive Policy Committee's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Eady?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I hear that some of my colleagues have problems with, oh, it might only be 50 years, if needed at all, Madam Speaker. I'm representing the Mynarski ward, one of the oldest neighborhoods in Winnipeg, called Point Douglas, North Point Douglas, and South. They used to be one, the railway split, but probably the oldest neighborhood in Winnipeg, with a lot of things, development as it happened over 100 years ago. I've had to try to assist people who bought homes, and there was certain regulations in place to follow proper sewer connections, proper public roads, proper this and that. And what happened, because they didn't consider the future, there's people who bought these houses which are a lot cheaper, but they're very unhappy, Madam Speaker, because it actually, that part of the neighborhood was not planned properly. They let them go ahead and not follow regulations, Madam Speaker. Follow the rules. And then, I'm here 100 and something years later. My office is trying to help people deal with it, and it's not easy, because once you decide to do something, to fix it way in the future costs a ton of money. So you could talk about increasing the assessment role and so on and so forth, Madam Speaker. But the reality is, will that assessment increase be enough to allow for money to expropriate land if they do need to build some kind of way off the main, I'll call it, anyway. So, and when I hear things like Hydroline, well, Madam Speaker, all you got to do is drive between mine and your wards and Councillor Santos's road down Inkster to see that there's actually roads that go under the Hydroline. I don't know what this Hydroline thing's all about, but roads do all through my ward, and Santos and Sharma's Road go under Hydro. So while it looks pretty clear that it makes sense, there's only, there was 39 people in support, 0 not opposed. Nobody's looking to the future. What is the problem going to be in the future? I know today that Public Works is telling me they don't have money to expropriate land. Madam Speaker, don't have money to expropriate land because we're using our land operating reserve to fund important things like community center renovations. So we can't utilize that to expropriate land, apparently. There's no money there. So, Madam Speaker, this decision to close might sound good, but I'm supportive of Public Works because, Public Works and Water and Waste, those departments, like Water and Waste is the one you got to deal with because developers weren't pushed to connect to the actual waste system that we had, Madam Speaker. Public Works is dealing with situations all over, like different wards, where decisions were made long ago, for example, not to put in sidewalks, which is a problem. because sidewalks are clearly needed. So, but it was okay for whoever developed that particular property or whatever, they don't care, they don't want a sidewalk because they want to use the extra right of way, whatever, Madam Speaker. So when we're making decisions and there's hearings, consideration, you know, they couldn't give answers, Public Works, but they know that there's a good possibility in the future. Look at the provisions out on North Main Street. So we got Chief Peguis Trail coming through, and then there's no way to get on and off Main Street north of, basically it's a lot of problems as you get north of Leela, a bit further past the park. So we got problems. We're providing transit system stops, frequent transit and so on. There's no way for those transit users to get across Main Street, Madam Speaker. So nobody was looking in the future, oh, what, we're going to need to do this, or going to need to do that. And anyway, so Public Works is probably saying right now it doesn't warrant the need at this point, but in the future, there's a good chance, good opportunity there, for that. And there's, you know, motor vehicles aren't going away. This is a great one. Yeah, close off all the streets. Cyclists will be safer. Well, well, the reality is traffic will be there. So today, I'm going to be opposed to the closing off of this street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eady. No further speakers. Councillor Duncan to close.
Sounds like a win-win, one way or the other. We get a vision for the future with roadways. Disagree with Councillor Allard's comments there, but thank you for those. Or we get new residential units.
Okay. All in favor of item 4? Pardon me, item 8. All in favor of item 8? Contrary? That's carried. Next item, Councillor Wyatt, you'll be recusing yourself for?
Sherry reason.
For item 9. Thank you.
Correct, thank you.
Madam Clerk, item 9.
Item 9, subdivision and rezoning, 2360 St. Mary's Road, DAS Sed 2 of 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Sorry, call the question, please. Thank you.
All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. We'll now get into bylaws. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll move bylaw number 132, 2024 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 132 of 2024.
Madam Speaker, I'll move that the bylaw number 132, 2024 be read a third time and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Madam Speaker, I'll move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 26, 2025, bylaw number 27, 2025, bylaw number 46, 2025, bylaw number 47, 2025, bylaw number 48, 2025.
Thank you. All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 26 of 2025, bylaw number 27 of 2025, bylaw number 46 of 2025, bylaw number 47 of 2025, bylaw number 48 of 2025.
I will now move that the bylaws number 26, 2025, 27, 2025, and 46, 2025 to 48, 2025, both inclusive, be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaws number 26 of 2025, 27 of 2025, and 46 of 2025 to 48 of 2025, both inclusive.
Also move that the rules be suspended and the bylaws number 2026, 2025, 2027, 2025, and 46, 2025 to 48, 2025, both inclusive, be read a third time and that the same be passed and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Now have question period under this committee. I'm going to call our Deputy Speaker up to take the chair. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, no surprise, I want to ask the Chair of Property and Development with respect to his comments that I read through the media regarding parking, to the extent that he can clarify the $2.50 charge to the $20 max charge he considers when the crowd warrants. Could he clarify if that's a policy he's pursuing and if those are price points, or will there be more?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I appreciate the councillor giving me the opportunity to clarify. You know, a lot of things get lost in the media, especially when you're providing quotes, and then a lot of things get lost around this council table. So with that, I will say, as quoted, with technology, you can do anything, he said, referring to myself. If there's nobody parking downtown, then maybe we can offer parking for free. If there's a mass influx of people that are parking and that the private vendors are charging $20 for parking, and we're charging $2.50 for parking, maybe we look at opportunities to generate more revenue. That is considered dynamic pricing. That is not saying that we are going to charge $20 for parking. But we're going to look at revenue opportunities because there's a lot of asks around this table, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we need to fund those asks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rollins, second question. Seeing none. Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wanted to rise just a preamble to the question, if I may, sir. And that is a number of years ago, council set aside, I think, about $400,000 in a given year. I forget the exact amount. It was something in that order, towards assisting the public service to conduct secondary planning exercises. Typically, when the economy starts to slow down, which we've seen now in terms of our applications, this is a wonderful time for us to do planning and to prepare for when the economy picks up again. You know, to look at neighborhoods where we can increase density, let's say, heaven forbid, Charleswood, and other areas of the city where there is low-hanging fruit potentially to see improvements happen. And I guess I preface my question now, and I ask the question, is the chair aware that because of the lack of funding that exists, that on tomorrow morning at the East Kelowna Transcona Community Committee, we will be moving over $200,000 out of the land dedication reserve, most likely with the support of Councillor Rawadi, to support the planning initiative now underway called the South Transcona Secondary Plan. This is to complement nearly $400,000 being spent by the private sector already on a significant plan that's going to add anywhere from 16,000 to 30,000 new people. The doors are a little bit less than that, but that 16,000 to 30,000 new residents to accommodate in South Transcona. Not to mention, we're trying to figure out how to pay for community parks, regional park, and community club. So these are, and preserve nature to get to our 1,000 acres to help on that cause too. So is he aware that we're going to be doing this tomorrow because of the lack of funding that exists right now in the city for exercises that are going to benefit the taxpayers and benefit the entire city, right, to meet our challenges?
Councillor Duncan.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was not aware that that was the plan at EKT tomorrow. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I can say that the Transcona Ward has definitely done its fair share of development to contribute to the tax base. And thank you for looking at the LDR as an option to continue that. Definitely some work that we need to do around funding to make sure that we're properly planning and executing growth in our city.
And thank you. A supplement question, is he aware, and I'm sure he's not aware of this, so I just say, I have to ask, are you aware, that Public Works is now stepping up to be part of we have a resident advisory group. We meet every 2 weeks, sometimes every week. We've been doing this for basically a year. They are advising us on crafting the plan. It'll come forward to council for approval, of course, but we're trying to eliminate as much of the uncertainties by having the public service at the table.
Question?
So that we can, is he aware of that, the Public Works Service? And is it possible now that Public Works is stepping up to be at the table all the time, that we could have a permanent member from P&D as well? Because we would love that, to have somebody there to participate so that when they file the application, it can be processed as quickly as possible for consideration of the floor council. And we remove a lot of the uncertainties.
Yeah, point of orders.
Motion to work into the lunch hour?
Okay, so the point of orders is applicable here to work past the lunch hour. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you, Councillor Chambers.
For a few minutes.
Yeah, Councillor, where are we at? Reply, Councillor Duncan. Please.
Yeah, that's great news that Public Works is on board with joining and giving input. It sounds a lot like, concierge services that Councillor Rollins advocated for and that are in full flight now throughout major developments in our city. I'd be happy to consult with P&D and have somebody at the table where at all possible to ensure that we have speedy developments that are well thought out and that aren't opposed by the public service at any point.
Okay, final question?
And my final question, kind of like the Seinfeld-Kramer reality tour, we are going to have a kind of a chuck wagon tour of South Transcona for the consultants to get to know the community better. And are you aware we'll be extending an invitation to you, the chair, to join us as well as part of the tour, as well as the director of planning, of course, too.
Councillor Duncan?
I am not aware, but I'm excited to do the chuck wagon tour in Transcona.
Take pictures. Okay. Seeing any other questions for Councillor Chair Duncan? Seeing none, moving on. Moving on now to the Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment dated May 5th, 2025, items 1 to 3. Any?
1 to 3?
Yeah.
I'd like
There
to,
he is.
I'd like to move adoption of the consent agenda items 1 through 3 for water, waste, and environment.
Anybody? Seeing that, Councillor 1, Councillor 2. Councillor Y wants to pull down item number 2, correct? Anybody else? Seeing none, okay, we'll consent agenda for items 1 and 3. All in support? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Item number 2.
Item 2, Climate Action and Resilience Committee 2025 operating budget.
Councillor Eady?
Yes, I'd like to hear from my colleague in regards to this budget request for a very important advisory committee for environment, climate change.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wyatt?
Yeah, Madam, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sorry, I'm an animal of habit.
I'm okay.
Like all of us. Mr. Deputy. I stood it down just to make a couple points, and that is, I think we have a lot of work to do in this file. We all know the warnings that have been issued globally that 1.5 climate moving beyond, increasing by degrees more than 1.5, the impact could be quite devastating, and it could happen within many lifetimes of people alive today. We could see tens of millions of people on the move from the global south to the global north. And we really need to take it up a notch. We have the ability, from my time on Public Works, we know we budget, for example, going forward, typically, for fuel prices. We budget out for fuel prices to go up, typically, over 5 years. Instead of us budgeting for fuel prices to go up, we open up a reserve account, and we take those funds that we would be budgeting in the future for increased fuel costs, and we use it to finance the transition of our fleet to electric vehicles across the board. Frankly, I'm not too sure about the hydrogen. I know transit's going that route, but I'm not sold on it. There's too many issues unknown. We're hearing about explosions in other jurisdictions and issues like that, not to mention the cost to maintain the facilities and build different facilities because of that technology. But I can tell you that recently the cost differential is massive in terms of fuel with electric vehicles. A year ago, I sat with Larry Vicker, who's a huge believer of moving this direction, by the way, in his office one evening. He had his electric vehicle out in the parking lot charging. We sat and talked in our time. We lost track of time, reminiscing and talking about different things. We talked for about 2.5 hours. In that 2.5 hours, his electric vehicle charged, and it was $2.46, something to this effect. Even if a third of that is knocked off because of the winter, as we know, the batteries are debris. we're talking about change. The amount of savings to us would be massive in terms of fuel, and we could use it again by borrowing against the future projected fuel costs that we say. There is a business plan, in other words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we could model ourselves to do, number one. Number two, when we went off and did our strategic study, our SPAP, one of the concepts that came out of that was for a green utility. That was one of myself, Councillor Eadie, others advocating for. Now, could you envision this city, building a massive solar array, working with a municipality somewhere in rural Manitoba? Can you imagine us installing the charging stations, not only for citizens around the city who are driving, but in every household which will need? Could you imagine the green utility having that ability and the revenue? We're talking about our property taxes and relying on property taxes. Could you imagine how we could diversify our revenue from that alone? That we could once again be the energy producer. And I would remind the Chamber that it was the City of Winnipeg that built the first hydroelectric dams in this province, not Manitoba Hydro. It was the City of Winnipeg that created Winnipeg Hydro long before Manitoba Hydro. And we did it with horses and axe and pick on a time on the Winnipeg River with technology that would be mind-boggling, like lack of technology. And we did it ahead of Manitoba Hydro. And then, of course, we sold it all off. Well, we can recreate it again. We're on the verge of a technological revolution, and we're sleeping. We could be taking advantage, and we could build this green utility that could fund, and we could say to the province, out of all the things, give us a monopoly on this, because you know what? We can deliver it. We do land use. Right? We control land use. We can control the location. We can set up our own stations. Why should Esso, why should Shell, none of them based here, be taking the profits and putting up the electric charging stations and from our electricity? No, it's our provinces, and we could be generating the hydro, because we didn't need Bipole 3, don't get me all going on that. We could have built a massive solar array to supplement Bipole 3, and we wouldn't have needed it. But we could have our own solar, we could be heading, and if you want to go anywhere in the world and see where they're doing this, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, folks. Israel, leading the charge. So let's get on top of it. We have no choice. Like, even for the climate deniers, I say to you this, is it worth the risk? Like, what if you're wrong? And what if it does heat up? And what if the permafrost in the north starts to melt the rate they say it is going to melt? And then northern Canada and northern Russia, when that permafrost melts and trillions of tons, the worst greenhouse gas starts to escape, methane, literally, this climate temperature could rise by degrees, not in years, but in potentially months. We could see a massive, the likes of which humankind has not seen for millennia. So, and I'm not trying to scare, I'm just saying, why take the risk? We need to lead this country on this stuff. We led before, when we were a city of 20,000 people. Tiny, smaller than Transcona. We led this country and this province when it comes to electric power generation. We could do it again. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I apologize.
Else is going to speak to it? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. By the way, your voice sounds good from coming up there. I would, just in closing, we get advice from this committee. It's important to fund it. I'm sure there are people at the table, Councillor Mays, who chairs that committee, could probably tell you, but a lot of good ideas are probably coming from there. Ultimately, in respect to Councillor Wyatt, we're trying to also protect the environment by trying to find $1.5 billion for finishing off the North End sewage plant. So anyway, that's it. It's a worthwhile committee, and let's fund it.
Okay, seeing no more speakers and close. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Carried. Move to adjourn, I think. Who wants that? I'm going to get, always got to go by Councillor Sharma. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead. Yeah, roll call. Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, Councillor Orlikow, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Edie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt, and Councillor Sharma.